Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I've been teasing for a little bit now that I was going to be doing a review video on some of the Bailey's Longlist books, and I've managed to read 2 so far, so I'm going to be grouping them together in this review and just kind of doing a double Bailey's prize review. And because this is the Bailey's Longlist, I'm drinking a nice glass of Bailey's. And no, this isn't traditional Bailey's. I'm actually drinking this one, which I found at the store the other day. This is almond Bailey's. So this is actually made with almond milk, which means there's no dairy in it. That's why it looks like milk. It's not traditional Bailey's. So I've got my glass of Bailey's. Let's get into the first book that I'm going to talk about, and that is Little Deaths by Emma Flint. So if you guys remember at all from my Longlist wish list or my Longlist TBR that I was going to be reading from, this was kind of what I considered my selfish Bailey's pick, and that's because this is very much squared away in a genre that I enjoy. So this book follows Ruth, a woman who has recently been separated from her husband Frank. She basically got bored and decided, this isn't the life I want to lead. I want to find if I can have a better life with somebody else. She has 2 young children with Frank, and she currently has custody of them. But then in the middle of the night, the kids are found missing. She goes into their room in the morning and realizes that they are not there. And that really sets off a whole chain of events leading up to their discovery, and then the investigation as to who took these children. This is what is kind of considered a very literary crime drama. It is incredibly well written. I really enjoyed the writing style, and I really enjoyed the depth of which I was able to understand Ruth and kind of understand a lot of the problems surrounding her. Ruth is from the beginning kind of seen as an unfit mother because she is a cocktail waitress. She has separated from her husband, she works very late hours, and she tends to sleep around a little bit. And the police kind of hone in on her as their primary suspect because she is not fulfilling this stereotypical role of a mother. While I would consider this a very well written book, I wasn't overly thrilled with it, and I will kind of explain why. So we've got the unfit mother, the one who's the cops have narrowed in as being the perpetrator of this crime. We then have a really hard-nosed detective, and his personality is basically just that. It's just he's a detective and he thinks that she's done it. That's the end of his character. And then we also have this kind of newbie reporter who gets swept up in this and thinks she's very glamorous and very sexy, and you know, he thinks that she's innocent but he can't do anything to prove it. So those 3 characters in of themselves make for kind of a stereotypical crime drama. That's where it kind of gives me some trouble, because while I think it was well written, I think the story overall was a little bit lacking for me because these 3 people were so tropey. The other thing that bothers me, and this is more of a personal thing rather than a tropey character thing, is I don't want my predominant feeling when I'm reading a book to be anger. I have read books that have made me very angry. I have read books about very unjust things. But there's a different level of anger with something like this and a book about a very important topic that makes you angry. Everybody in this book is incredibly sexist. Nobody is giving her a break, like, at all, except for this reporter who still only sees her basically as a sex object. I know that she was trying to make a point and this was supposed to be written in the 60s, but I don't want my predominant feeling to be just anger at people being stupid. Every element that would be required for a noir book is in this. So if that's really your thing and you like crime drama, you might still like this. I was a little underwhelmed by it. And again, I don't like that my predominant feeling was just being mad at everybody all the time. I want there to be some glimmer of hope. I want there to be something else that's pulling me back into the story. Next up is the book that I actually read first, and that is Hagseed by Margaret Atwood. Now, I no longer have Hagseed with me because it was due back and I returned it like a good library patron. Alright, so Hagseed, as I have talked about many times before, is part of the Hogarth Shakespeare collection. This is following kind of a retelling of The Tempest. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised at how easy it was to read. I thought that Atwood was going to be one of these classical authors that I was really going to have to devote a lot of time and energy into understanding. So one of the things that can really be a hit or a miss for me in books is if the book gets too meta. And this book was very meta. It was about a theater director who was trying to put on a play of The Tempest, and this obviously being a retelling of The Tempest, that kind of like multi-layer telling a story about telling a story, I thought was really interesting and sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't, and in this case I really think it did work. Another thing that I really appreciated about this retelling is that it took the heart of stuff that is at Shakespeare. It takes revenge and isolation and very over-the-top dramatic responses to things and really zoned in on this. So this was less to me like a retelling as it was an homage to things that are very Shakespearean. So as a brief catch-up, Hagseed is about Felix, who is a theater director. He is putting on a showing of The Tempest at this theater company that he works at, and about halfway through the production, he is usurped by his right-hand man. He then goes and isolates himself in this cabin, basically in another town a couple hours away. And after that, he gets a job at a correctional facility teaching like English literature and drama. And there he teaches these inmates to perform Shakespeare. So I don't know if you guys have had the same experience with Shakespeare, but to me, Shakespeare characters have always been kind of moral signifiers. You're not really supposed to care one way or the other if they live or die because they're not fully developed characters, they're just moral placeholders. And so part of me wanted to feel that same way about the characters in this book, and at times you do. They are still very much moral placeholders and, you know, ideals put into a character. And in that regard, I think a lot of Shakespeare tends to be very entertaining. I think it tends to be very funny. I think it's very tongue-in-cheek. I actually found this book very entertaining. I thought it was very funny at parts. I thought the main character's like melodrama was so good. It was so Shakespearean, and I was so glad that there was a little bit of retention of like true Shakespearean style, as you know, Felix is explaining this and he's just waxing poetic about how betrayed he felt, and it's very interesting that she managed to kind of like take it and then put it on top of a theater director who you might expect to be a little bit more theatrical, and then it makes it just work a little bit better. It pulls kind of everything together in the end. I didn't expect to care about everybody, so while it was really funny, at the end of it I was like, I've had a little bit of my heartstrings were tugged, and I wasn't expecting that. And I think, you know, it was just a very interesting take. I think Shakespeare sometimes is more effective if you take the story and don't modernize it too much, but you pay homage to it more than retell it. So those are the two books that I have read so far from the Bailey's Longlist. Please let me know down below if you guys have read any. I'm desperately trying to get a hold of some of the others. I obviously have The Essex Serpent sitting up on my shelf, and I will be getting to that one next. It is next on my list. As we come into the final few days before the shortlist is announced, do you guys have any predictions for what's going to be on the shortlist? I would love to know down below, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye!